Rules Committee to come to order, and thank you very much for gathering together this afternoon back at the awesome Rules Committee. The Rules Committee is convening to proceed with consideration of the rule for H.R. 1694, the Fannie and Freddie Open Records Act of 2017. Rule includes a good governance amendment in attempt to address the estimated cost of the underlying legislation. As we'll recall, yesterday we took testimony, but we did not have information that would allow us to move forward. We've now done that, so without further delay, we'll proceed with consideration of the rule. Chair will be in receipt of a motion from the gentleman, the young chairman from Oklahoma.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 1694, the Fannie and Freddie Open Records Act of 2017, a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and the ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule makes an order as the original text for the purpose of amendment, an amendment in the nature of a substitute, consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 115-14, modified by the amendment printed in Part A of the Rules Committee report, and provides that it shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule makes an order only those further amendments printed in Part B of the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and unopponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to demand for division for the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendments printed in Part B of the report. The rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions. Section 2 of the rule provides that it shall be in order at any time through the legislative day of April 29, 2017, for the Speaker to entertain motions that the House suspend the rules, and that the Speaker or his designee shall consult with the minority member or her designee on the designation of any matter for consideration pursuant to this action. Finally, Section 3 of the rule waives Clause 6A of Rule 13, requiring two-thirds of the vote to consider a rule on the same day it's reported from the Rules Committee against any resolution reported through the legislative day of April 29, 2017.
You've heard the motion from the gentleman from Oklahoma. Is there amendment or discussion to that? Ranking member, the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I'm reading this rule correctly and hearing it correctly, I see that you're declaring blanket martial law for the rest of the week. And I realize that the government runs out of funding on Friday. But can I ask what other bills you expect to bring up under martial law? I mean, will we see health care or tax reform or whatever President Trump wakes up and tweets about tomorrow? I mean, what are the other possible bills that we expect to bring up under martial law other than the spending bill?
I appreciate the gentleman not only asking the question, but trying to make sure that we as a committee prepare ourselves for those things that might appropriately come to the committee. And as best I can tell you, that we do believe there will be what might be called, as you called it, a spending bill.
Right.
That would be for 2017, and I would anticipate that we are going to take that up. Other than that, what we've simply done is give us latitude. As you know, we've agreed the Speaker would consult with the minority leader on any other matters, and at this time, I have nothing to report about that matter.
Well, I appreciate that, but I mean, if indeed the only bill that we're contemplating is this appropriations bill, and that you don't have any other plans to bring up something else, why wouldn't we just limit the martial law authority to the appropriations bill? And I'll just add, I mean, I'll be honest with you, the reason why we ask is because, I mean, every day we hear the White House say announce another major initiative that we don't know whether we're going to see or not. And clearly, if we're going to bring up health care or something like that, I would like to think there'd be hearings maybe this time in the committees of jurisdiction, or that we would see text well in advance, and that would have a time to review it. I mean, I understand, again, with regard to the funding bill, but I think it should go without saying that my friends have had months and months to fund the government, so to leave it at the last minute like this is inexcusable. We have had almost 7 months into the fiscal year, but I mean, I could, given where we are right now, I understand the the authority you're looking for that, but this is blanket, and I think some of us are concerned that something major might come up, and there'll be no time for anybody to review it.
Yeah, I would, and thank you very much. I would guess that what we'd have to do is come up here and do something. If we were going to do it, we would give notice, we would talk with you about it presumptively. The speaker would be talking to Mrs. Pelosi. There would be some advance notice. We would have to put, things up on the website where we were aware of it. Members would have to be given notice. We would have the same problem, in essence, that
Right,
that you would have also.
now.
Our members
Right,
would
but-
like to see things also. You remember, we've got people on our side that hold us pretty close to the line
Right,
also.
You and I are in agreement on making sure everybody has enough time and to be able to look at this. I'm just saying, but the rule that allows us to bring, gives you same-day authority, right? To bring
Well-
something, right?
Yeah, but all that does is avoid another rule. Where we've still got to come to the committee. We've still got to get our things done. We've still got to give notice. We've still got to make sure we post. We've still got to make sure that we let our members know what the things that are occurring. And all we've done is given ourselves flexibility.
Right, and I understand the flexibility.
Yes, sir.
Without, sound like
Okay,
a broken
then you
record here.
get that.
I understand the flexibility, although it's, we shouldn't be in this position to begin with. I understand the flexibility with regard to the continuing resolution, but I don't understand the flexibility with regard to everything else.
Well, if the gentleman would yield,
Deputy
let's
Yield.
put a fine point on it. And since we are in the posture, the chair having asked for any potential amendment, Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule, and I move the committee amend the rule to limit the waiver of Clause 6A of Rule 13 to apply only to measures related to appropriations. And with that in mind, I would reiterate the comments of my colleague, Mr. McGovern, and assert, among other things, that according to the rule as printed, you can bring up anything. And look, let's be mindful of happenings today and going forward. And it's your prerogative. You're in the majority. If you want to bring up what you're going to call health care, then bring it on up. But give people an opportunity to really be able to come to terms with the substance, even the continuing resolution. A friend of mine asked me, well, what's going to be in it if you kick the can down the road for a week or whatever? I told him, I don't know. And that makes me feel bad. And I promise you, there aren't 400 members of Congress that know. And so that's just not right. So I stand on the amendment and yield back to Mr. McGovern.
I agree with him.
Okay, well, him, the young judge, yes, sir, has an amendment that he has now placed before the committee. Is there discussion? Okay, let's vote. How about that? All right, all those in favor of the Hastings Amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those no. No. Noes have it. The gentleman asked for a roll call vote. The clerk will poll the committee.
Mr. Cole? No. Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins, no. Mr. Byrne? Mr. Byrne, no. Mr. Newhouse? Mr. Buck? No. Mr. Buck, no. Ms. Cheney? Ms. Cheney, no. Ms. Slaughter? Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings? Aye. Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis? Aye. Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
3 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Not agreed to. Further amendment or discussion? Okay, the vote will now be on the motion from the young chairman from Oklahoma. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
Ayes have it.
Ask
The
for a
ayes
roll
have
call,
it.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman asked for a roll call vote. Clerk will poll the committee.
Mr. Cole? Aye. Mr. Cole, aye. Mr. Woodall? Aye. Mr. Woodall, aye. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, aye. Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins, aye. Mr. Byrne? Mr. Byrne, aye. Mr. Newhouse? Mr. Buck? Aye. Mr. Buck, aye. Ms. Cheney? Ms. Cheney, aye. Ms. Slaughter? Mr. McGovern?
No.
Mr. McGovern, no. Mr. Hastings? No. Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis? No. Mr. Polis, no. Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Clerk will report the total.
8 yeas, 3 nays.
The motion is agreed to, and the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Woodall, the gentleman also from the Budget Committee will be handling this
And I'll
for
handle it for the
Republicans,
Democrats.
and Mr. McGovern will be handling this for Democrats. I want to thank everybody for allowing us to get our ducks further in a row on this issue. I want to thank you very much. I do expect that you will be hearing soon of our next opportunity to get together at the clubhouse and to debate the issue. I do not know the answer that is going, what's going to follow yet, but I look forward to hearing from our. Good.
Mr. Chairman, are there any other meetings that we expect for the week?
Yes, sir, I do expect one more meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This finishes our work for this rule.